All right, hello everyone. My name is Mildred, and in this live class, we're going to go over the topics that you have requested you want to know more about. We're going to first start with what Flask is, and Flask is a Python framework that is based on the web server gateway interface and the Jinja2 template engine. When we use Flask, it's lightweight. For beginners, it's better to always use Flask than even Django. I don't know, I prefer Flask than Django. I don't see anyone better than the other, but Flask gives you the flexibility that you want as a developer to do as much and to go beyond the boundaries of the framework. Django is not that lightweight and it doesn't have as much flexibility, and that's why it's my preference. But they are similar in terms of routing and the general concept. But starting with Flask gives you less of the headache and the overhead. For us to start Flask, you need to install Flask. Now on the system, when you install Python and you have different projects, these different projects depend on different libraries and different versions of different packages. Now, if you install this system-wide, it might now start causing clashes between different applications. And for that, we need a virtual environment. You always want to create your project and then create a virtual environment within your project before you start installing dependencies. Now, for those of you that will move on to advanced Python and production development, which is the course after this one, for those who want to actually become developers to implement projects, you will learn how to have a dependency manager and use environment files. So this is the basic. We're not going to go into that detail, but take note that whatever you learn up until week 30 doesn't make you production ready. It just gives you all of the basic concepts that lets you go deeper into what you need for a production ready code. So the first thing you want to do is to navigate to the directory of your choice. I want to create this in my desktop, so I'll cd desktop. So for you, any directory you want to create your project in. So I'm in the desktop and I want to create a folder. That folder is my app file. So I will make directory. This is how you do it. And I want to make a directory. Let's call it new project, like this. So I will cd into my new project. So now I have my new project created on my desktop. I can open the folder here. I'll go to my desktop and I'll look for new project and I'll open it here. So we can see I have my new project folder. There is nothing inside of it. We want to start creating project. These files and folders here. First of all, we want to install the Flask that is dependent on other dependencies that we need. So I'll go to terminal and new terminal. I'm there in my new project. So what I will do next now is to create a virtual environment. So make sure you are in your project folder before you create your virtual environment. So I'll create it like this: Python 3 env. But I want to give a name to my virtual environment. I like giving the conventional name .venv. It can be any name. It can be my environment if you want, anything you want, but I'll give it the name .venv. That's my own name. Conventionally, you always find people name their stuff exactly like this. Okay, so enter and you'll find a folder called .venv here. In the bin directory is where you have the scripts that can activate this environment. It sees that you have pip already there and Python 3.11 because that's the version of Python I have installed on my system. So for you who just installed Python, you might have 3.12 or the most recent version of Python, but at the time of this lesson, this is the version that I have. Okay, so the version doesn't matter, it just has to be greater than version 3.8. Now we have created the environment. We want to first of all activate the environment before we start creating the project. So to activate, I'll put dot. Now you have to put a dot just because of file permission, and then dot .venv/ bin/activate. So if you have a problem with activation, you want to check your folder. Sometimes, especially if you are using Windows and not here, you will see scripts. So at that point, it will be scripts, and you look at the name of the file there, if it's activate or whatever, and you write it like this, the same pattern. So here I have a bin and I have activate. So I'll do .venv/bin/activate, and because of file permission, I put a dot first. If not, I'll get permission denied. Now, once activated, you will see the name of your virtual environment in parentheses there. So is it understandable to this point?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you have done this, it is time for you to start installing stuff. You want to install Flask, install SQLAlchemy, and any database driver that you will need. So let's start installing now. So we'll say here we want to say pip install Flask, and Flask has dependencies that will be installed along with it. And if you read this, you'll see what is installing. Installing Jinja2 template is part of it, and all other stuff that we will not use, but you need them there. We also have this message to upgrade pip, and so we'll install upgrade here. Okay. Also, once this is done, we want to install SQLAlchemy. So let's say pip install SQLAlchemy. And then I want to install.
Hello, ma'am.
Yep.
Now, the SQLAlchemy, is it the database that we are going to be using?
No, it's the object relational mapper that connects to the database. Now, when you want to connect to a database and you want to write your script, you don't have to use SQLAlchemy. We can use Flask directly, and you see that in week 21. I don't think you have gotten there to that week, but we just showed that you can connect via Flask and all that. But then you'll find that it has a lot of difficulties in terms of trying to migrate from one place to another. If you use an object relational mapper, it's like you are creating a class representation of your database, and you are able to write classes that create your database tables and all the columns and data types within the table. So SQLAlchemy is an object relational mapper. It is not a database. We are still using MySQL, but we are using SQLAlchemy as so in plain terms, this is not actually what it is, but you can think of it as the middleman that connects Flask and MySQL. Okay? Do you understand it that way? But I'm going to go deep into what SQLAlchemy is so you will understand it better. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we install SQLAlchemy, and we're going to look at that in a little bit of detail shortly. And then we want to install MySQL, which is the let's say the driver that we want to use to connect. You can use anyone, but let's use MySQL. So since pip install. So if you look at your course resource, I have lesson notes for the different ways to connect. If you go through those, lesson resource has all the code and the pre-recorded video and the previous live lessons. Okay. So I'll say pip install MySQL. I think I typed it wrongly. Let's see. You can install SQLAlchemy. So we're beginning to have that problem because we installed pip, and so we upgraded pip. Now the problem starts. I've noticed that every time there is a pip upgrade, we begin to have this not found, these problems here. This happened the last time, and when you begin to trace and continue to trace why this is not working, you won't even understand why it is not working. And so what I do is just start afresh. As far as I've not gone far into the project, I'm just installing dependencies. I just clean them out and start from the beginning, because that's the only thing. Sometimes you try to deactivate this and then you reactivate, it will work. Sometimes it doesn't. This has a mind of its own. So I'm going to activate back, and then let's see. So when you get to run into problems like this and you have not gone so far, just come here and delete your virtual environment and start all over again. Okay, so these are real world problems that will always happen to you when you are developing. So now we've deleted the virtual environment. We want to create the virtual environment again. We're still in our project directory, so we'll do Python 3 venv. I still want the name to be .venv. So that's been created, and now I want to start installing everything. So I'll say pip install Flask. Okay, I want to install SQLAlchemy. Pip install SQLAlchemy. Okay, I want to install MySQL. Pip install MySQL. Okay, so you see what I was doing. I was installing system-wide, and when I try system-wide, it already exists. I did not activate my virtual environment before starting here. So what we kept getting was requirements already satisfied, because these exist on my system and not in the project. So why I did this was for you to see that if you have this on your system, you keep getting requirements already satisfied. But when you now try to use this, you won't find any Flask project here. And then you now start saying, I've been installing Flask, but I don't have Flask, because your environment was not activated when you did your installation. So we'll activate. So that is the step you must never forget before you start installation. You must see the name of your virtual environment here. All right. So we'll do pip install Flask. So you now have it installed in your virtual environment. I will ignore upgrading pip, because every time I upgrade pip, this problem starts. So we'll do pip install SQLAlchemy. We'll have it installed, and then pip install MySQL, and so we have everything installed. So these are the dependencies that we need. So I'm glad you could see the kind of error you have. Some of you have gotten stuck on this error for weeks before, and when the easiest thing would have been delete your virtual environment. Either you upgrade pip before you start, or you install everything and don't bother upgrading anything like that. I don't know why, but every time I upgrade pip, then we begin to have that error that it can't find something when you try to install. So up until this point, you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
All
right. So when you come to the library here, you'll find all the things that have been installed. Flask. There we have SQLAlchemy here, we have MySQL here, so you know that all your dependencies were installed completely. When you have all of this, you need to think about, what is this project about? What are we trying to create? First of all, let's say we want to just create our STI data like we did before, and you want to think of the directory, the files, how you want to structure all of these files and folders. What do you want to have? Do you want to have a role-based system? Do you want to have a permission-based, role-based authentication and permission-based authorization, things like that? So these are the things you think about, and if you look at your project deliverable one, these are the kind of things you want to think about before you start writing about what it is that you are creating. Okay? So For this, we want to create the class project. We want to have a directory that has files that will hold the classes that creates the database table. We want to have a file that connects to the database and will be like the entry point of the system. We want to have a folder that will hold all of the templates. And for Flask, you need to have a templates directory. For Flask will by default look at the template directory for every HTML file. Look at the HTML file as the view, the front end, the interface that the users will see. And then when you have a static folder, you need to have something called static, and that is where Flask is going to look for by default for all your JavaScript and style sheets that will be used for your design. So knowing that, you know that the first thing you want to do now after achieving this is to start creating your folders. The first folder I want to create now is the templates. It must be spelled like that with the same capitalization for Flask to know where to find all of your templates. You also want to create another folder. This will be all of this will be in the root. We'll create a folder, and this folder will be called static. This will be where JavaScript and cascading style sheets will be placed. Then we want to create a file. Let's leave this file in the root of the project. So we'll create a file and we'll call this file app.py. It will be the entry point of this. And then let's create another directory in the root here, and we'll call this models. And we want this to hold files that hold the classes that will create a different database table class. Okay? So do you understand it up until this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, model and app file. Please, can you explain that again?
Okay. So this app file is like the entry point where you write the script that does your database connection, your that will run the file and get the different routes to the different page. So when you go to the index page, the routes that will go there, the about page, the contact page, this will hold all of the routes, the app file.
Okay.
It's not compulsory that it must be app. Some people name it main.py. And when you are developing professionally, there's a different way you would do this connection. It's not going to be like this, and that we discuss in course 3. But for you to understand this first, and I will tell you something, Python is easy to learn, but you see the mastery is so hard. And to master Python, you have to go step by step, take baby steps, and don't jump professionally before you understand why we're going that way. Okay, so for now, what you want to understand is you have a file, a Python file, maybe in the root of the application that holds your routes for you to be able to learn how to route to the different page and write codes that goes to the database and connects to the database and so on. But this is not the professional way that you create your production ready application. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what about the model, ma'am?
The model is just a folder I created so that we'll create different files in that folder. And when you say model just means database tables and how they are related, right? And so in this models folder, we want to put files. These files are just classes. The classes just defines it just holds class that defines what the database table is, the columns and the column definition, the constraints and all that. Okay. You understand it now?
Hello, ma'am. Sorry, my network keep cutting, but I'm with you. Just let's go on.
Okay. So the first thing you want to do is to import Flask from the Flask. So look at the capitalization. There are some things you just need to memorize that this is the way to do it. From Flask, import Flask. And for those of you that do, I think Chioma and Edmond, for those of you that do that had pair programming with me this week for Fast API, you can see it's almost the same pattern that we imported Fast API like this, and then we instantiate it in a different way, and we'll say app is equal to create an instance of this, right? So these things, when you know one of them, it will be easy to learn something else. All right. So we looked at before that when we want to run a file as a script, we just use if name equals to main. We want to run this app.run debug equal true. Debug equal true means that every time we update this file, we want the routes to automatically reload with the new changes. Okay, if we want to put a port, we want it to load on a different port, we add the port here, but this is okay for us. So we have imported Flask and we have created an instance of it stored in something we call app. Now it's time for us to create routes. We use a decorator, the route decorator. So we'll say an app.route. Now, when you go to a web page like this, let's go to a web page. When you come to a web page like this, the first thing you will see is, let me say I have facebook.com. No, let me not use Facebook. Okay, let me use facebook.com. When you go put a /, it means you want to be on the landing page like this. If you put a / about, you want to go to the about page like this, so you can see what's going on. So this is how we create routes. So route here will be, when you say app.route like this, in the parentheses we want to say this is the home page /, right? And then we'll create a function that will be run whenever we hit the routes, that is the home page. If we want an about page, we can say an app.route /about, and then you want to create a function. So what the routes decorator does is that it binds to a function, and this function is run every time anybody goes to this place on the web page. So when we go to the home page of this application, we should see hello world printed. When we go to the about page, we should see about me printed. Let's run and see that all is well first. So it's working well. It's running on port 5000. I will copy this and open it on the web page. And what I want to see is hello world, which is like the home page should have hello world. If I put / about, because the route that I did about, I should see about me. So we see that we've already started building a web page, and we are now creating the different routes to the different pages. Now, is it clearer now?
Yeah, clearer now.
Yeah. So when normally we don't return this. There's a whole lot of things in the body of.
Hello,
yes.
Now, so the essence of that route is to hit a particular page, right?
Yes. So the route is like a page on the web.
So we can create many routes for as many pages we want to get to.
Yes, and also you can have a route that's not linked to a page but will render a template for you to maybe update a file or something. We'll get to that when you get to week 23 and week 29. You will get deeply into that. Okay,
to update a file on the web page.
Yes, like we have a form now. Let's say this about page links to a form.
Okay.
It renders a template.
Okay.
It shows you a form, and the form is an updatable form. You filled it before. You log in and you want to retrieve your values before, so you can update them. You can have a route that's just for updating the form. So route is just for you to get to a particular place. So routing is just like to move from one part of the application to another. Some routes do not display pages, but just process pages. Yeah. So when you do this, yes.
I wanted to also ask the order of arranging the different pages routes is also necessary, right? Maybe the home page.
No, the order is not necessary. The order is just for neatness, but it's not necessary. Anyhow you organize it, it just looks for the route what you name the route as, no matter where it is on your page, and it displays, it runs the function.
Okay.
Yeah, so the order is not necessary. When you do the order, it's just for you to have a neat page. So most of the time we want to have our pages to be very neat. We want to do something like have template. But first of all, I'm not going to go towards to show you how to connect to the database using the Flask MySQL. Let's go to SQLAlchemy. The reason why it is very important to learn SQLAlchemy is that when you migrate to other frameworks, when you're using any other thing, SQLAlchemy is widely used. If you are using Fast API, if you are not using any framework at all, any other program you are using, SQLAlchemy can be an ORM, and it just makes it easy for you. You are going to be writing your code exactly the same way, so it makes it so easy. So that's why SQLAlchemy is always the ORM of choice, because in the industry, that is what is widely used. People use other stuff, but SQLAlchemy is just, in my opinion, the best. Okay? So let's look at the SQLAlchemy stuff. We have done all of this. Let's stop here for now. We'll look at Jinja templates, but let us look at how we can connect to a database. Okay, we want to have a database where we want to connect to, and we want to be able to send data, insert record, and update from that from different database tables. We want to also be able to create databases from our model. Now, I'm not going to do that today because I want you guys, Edmond, to show you how to build your templates. He's going to do it outside of this, the prerequisite course, because not all of you here did course 1 or understand how to build HTML file. So he's going to work with that for you. So object relational mapping is like a programming technique for converting data between a relational database and object-oriented programs. I think that should be like the standard definition. And it's just like a layer of connection, like the middleman, like I explained before. It's like the layer that connects object-oriented programs to relational databases like this. And so we have installed the SQLAlchemy, we have installed MySQL, and we just want to use that as the driver. Okay, so we will import SQLAlchemy here like this. So for you to use it, you have to import it. We've installed it. So when we import SQLAlchemy, we can now start using SQLAlchemy to connect to the database. Okay, so let's connect to the database, to a database that exists. I have to look for one. We already have one here called STI data that we created previously, and it has tables in them. So let's try to connect to this database and try to read from one of the tables. Okay, so we will come here and say, so want to import create engine. So let's say, from SQLAlchemy, import create engine. I'll also import text because I like writing my SQL query the same way that we learned it. So if you put it in the parentheses of the text function, the text method, it will allow you write your raw SQL query like that. So I'll import text. We need a connection string, and this connection string specifies your database, your relational database system and the connector that you are using. If you're not using MySQL, you can use MySQL connector. It's another driver you can use. So I will come here and say, let's say connection string, and this is equal to, I'll say MySQL plus the driver I'm going to use, MySQL, then column, 2 forward slash. The username is always root if you have not changed it. And when you put root and the password. Now, my SQL does not have a password. If yours have a password, we are going to put the password here. So I'll delete that part because I don't have a password. Okay? But if you have a password, you put, for instance, my password is cos123. Yeah?
This is actually the place I'm having challenge.
Okay.
The first you mentioned going to the database that is already existing. Now, if I'm using MySQL Workbench, maybe that's where I have my database.
Yeah.
And then I also have challenge in this area of root and password. Let's say I have password when I was downloading, I created password.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to put it here?
So this is where you put it here now. This column that is here. So the thing is that you put your host, you put your username, which is always root, a column, and then your password. Let's say I have a password cos123, but I don't have a password, so I'll delete it. Password cos123 at your host, which is always localhost. Column, the port. The default port for MySQL is 3306. Because it's the default port, you don't need to specify it. But if you want to, you can put it so that you know where all the values are. So it is your MySQL plus the driver you are using, which we installed MySQL. If we installed MySQL connector, you can put that there. Then you put a column, 2 forward slash, the username, which is root, a column, and your password. If you don't have a password like me, you can leave the password out. At your host, which is always localhost, column, the port. If you are using a different port that is not the default port, my default port is 3306. That's what I'm using. I'll leave it there. Forward slash, I'll put STI data, which is the database I want to connect to. So now you understand it?
Okay, ma.
Yes.
Yes, but
hello,
ma.
I want to... No.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, let him finish.
Okay, since I'm using my SQL Workbench as where my database is,
yeah, it's exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. But if you have a password, make sure you specify your password here. So here's your password. And if you are using a different port, everybody's using 3306. But if your port is different, if your MySQL port number is different, specify it here in place of 3306. Because I don't have that, I'll have an error. So I have to remove it from mine. I don't have a password for my own. Okay? And then the name of it exists. Yes.
Now, 2 things I want to ask. Number 1 is this connection underscore string.
Yeah. So it can be any name.
Can you throw more light on that? Then number 2.
Okay.
It can be any name.
Yeah.
It's just like a variable.
Variable name. Like yeah, it's a variable, yes.
Now, the second one is assuming my database is not on my local machine. Maybe it's on a particular server that I need to connect to. That local host, can I put the IP address there?
Yes, that's what you will do there. You are going to put the link of the server, the location of the server and the port.
Okay.
Yeah, but if your development is running on the same place where the server is, then it's local. But if it's running on different place that you are connecting to something outside of yours, you have to put the address here. And then the column, the port. If you don't have the port, you just leave it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So once you have your connection string, this is just a variable name. It can be anything you want. But I just put connection string to make it like descriptive. Then you have to say the engine is equal to, there is a method from the SQLAlchemy that we imported, create engine, where you put the connection string in the parentheses has an argument for it. And then let's say echo equal to true. Yeah. We want to, the echo flag is just a shortcut for login. Okay, so this one is accomplished by the Python login module. We just want to be able to log errors and so. All right, so echo equal to true. I'm getting an error here. I don't know what it is. Let me put a port. And I'm going to run that. on this. Yeah, and I'm back there. All right, so I have this. So the important thing you need to know is you import from SQLAlchemy, import create engine, and you can also import text, because we're going to use this now when we try to see if we can read from the database tables. Let's see if this connection actually happened. So let's try to read from it. So remember we did context managers and how we manage resources. So I will use context manager so that I don't have to deal with opening and closing connections. Okay. So I'll come here and I'll say, I don't even need all of this app and so, but I'll just leave it. But I'll say with. So what I want to do with engine.connect is what you need to do. The connect method returns the connection object. So I'll say with engine.connect, I want to give it another name, connection. I want to say results. Let me just accept this, but we're not selecting from STI data. Let's look at the STI data and see we want to select all from user, for instance. The user table has 2. So we want to, let's select everything. Let's see if we can see this on the screen where we are. All right. So I'll say with engine.connect has connection, result is equal to select all from user. Is it user or users? Let's see. Yeah, it's user, not user. Select all from user, right? And then let's do because we use execute here, so we just put everything in one stop. So connection.execute, and the parentheses of the execute, I use the text method that I did there so that I can just put plain SQL text within it, and then it will be able to understand this. So we've gotten the result, and we know that it will be different rows of results coming out from the table. There'll be several rows, and so I now said for row in result, print row, right? And when I run, we can see that it has printed it here for us to see the result. What we have there, we have 1 lovely@hotmail.com, we have the password hashed, and 2 lovely that, and that is what we have here, which means that it connected and it can read from a database table that we specified. So should I go over it again?
Yes, ma'am. Go over it again. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Now, what I want to ask now. Yeah. Now, when you say with ng.connect, what are we trying to achieve in that place now?
We want to return a connection object. We want to connect to the database. That's what they're saying. Connect to the database and return a connection object. So that connection object is what we use to execute a query. You have to establish a connection to execute a query through that connection. So this is just the method that it has. The engine is the connections. This engine, you see what we did here? We first use the connection string. Some people don't go to create any variable here. They just come here and use this string here. So this does not exist. And so here, what you just do is to have your connection string here. You see that? And it's still the same thing. So they'll say create engine, the first parameter will be the connection string. So because you don't want it to be confusing, that's why we created a variable to hold the string first, and then we'll pass the variable here, and we'll say echo equal to true. This is not compulsory, but we just want to be able to log errors. Okay? So in the create engine method here, you will put your connection string so you can create an engine. And now is that engine that you create that you want to use to connect and get a connection object. That connection object is what you now use to run your query, to execute queries. So this is just the standard. You write, so if you don't want to be confused, you have your connection string, and then you put the variable name here, connection string. So any variable name, you can make it my connection, you can write the name to be my connection, it will still do the same thing. So whatever name you have here is what you're passing here. Then this, I'm using context manager because I don't want to deal with open file and close. All those open and close, once the block is exited, we want it to automatically close the connection. So we don't want to do things like connection.close and connection.open and all of those code. Okay? And if we want here, we can say commit, because now this thing rolls back as soon as it's done. You can see engine.rollback. If you don't commit it, it rolls back, because auto committing here is set to off, it's not on. So you can do connection.commit if you want to make sure that it's committed at the end. Okay, commit like that. So when it happens now, it is committed. So you don't see it roll back, you get it. So if you want to display it on the table, it displays on the table. If you don't put the commit, it doesn't display on the table. It shows you on your terminal that the connection is established. You can read the values, it's displayed here. But if you are to send it to a template, it will not display in the template. Okay? So you understand this one now?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
another thing I want to ask is, maybe in case, how do I really find out the ports my workbench is on, and then maybe I've forgotten my password? Is there a way around it?
That will be from your system, resetting your password. MySQL Workbench, I'm not sure how your version is, but there should be a place where, play around with the admin pass and see where there might be a place to change password or to, but if you can't even log in at all, then I'm not even sure how you want to flow. You have to do that from the command line. And if you have difficulties, book a one-on-one, you share your screen, then I'll show you what to do on that. So if you can't, if you're not able to do that, I'll show you the commands on the command line to be able to flush all the identities and create new one.
It's okay.
Okay. And then the ports, it's always, if you didn't change the ports, it's always 3306, except if you particularly assign a new port to MySQL. But if you didn't do that, it's 3306.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So we'll look at Jinja template. Now then, I'll hand over to Edmond to show you how to or to refresh for those who have done course 1, and for those who have not done, you'll begin to learn how to create responsive pages. So that will be like a front-end thing that he will go over for you. So when we say that in the templates directory here, in this directory, you're going to have all of the HTML files in the templates. The name has to be templates, except if you do some configuration settings to tell Flask where to look for templates, but you don't want to have that headache. Make sure your folder name has to be template. In this template, you can create files, and these files are the HTML files, like the views where you can render templates. So when we come to this index page here, when we run and come to this index page here, you want to display a beautiful page. So those are the templates we want to create. Now, if you look at the lesson that was our last live class, and I think I should have left the YouTube link in the chat this morning for you to go over, you will see how we created a base file. But let's just do that for the purpose of those who want to understand it. So we'll create a new file. I'll call this base.html, and I'll create another file, and I'll call this index.html. Now, I was going to do the Jinja stuff here, but I'm thinking it might just be best for you to learn the prerequisite first before we start, if not you get confused. But there are some of you here who already understand front end, who have done the front end course. So maybe I'll do the templates, and then when you do the front end, you can now revise it again. All right. So what do you think? I should do that now, or you want to go to the prerequisite first and then come back to it?
And go ahead, ma.
Okay. All right. So Jinja templating is just the templating engine that comes with Flask. When you install Flask, you have the Jinja2 template. I think it's Jinja2 that is installed with it. Now, when we say we have a base file, it's just that you have a file that holds the common HTML structure. Now, let's look at what the HTML structure is. We say the basic HTML template is written like this. We have the doc type declaration first, and the doc type declaration just tells the browser that this is a HTML5 document, and it now understands how to pass the document. So it just like writing this just tells all browsers how to pass it in the same way. Now, there is a main tag that you need to have, which is the HTML tag. That tag has a closing tag. So write HTML, and then we close HTML like this. Within this HTML tag, we have the head, and then we have the body. In the head part, we have metadata. In the body part, we have everything displayed on the web page. Now, because this is a template, now let's read the HTML basic file. We have the head, and then we have close head, and then we have the body, and then we close body. Now, the way you do your template depends on whatever you want to do. There is no fixed way. There's no right and wrong, as long as it displays what it needs to display. In the head part, there are common metadata that you might want to put that is uniform for all pages, that you want to inherit on every page. And those parts, those things you need to list. Now, there are things that are just common to, that is just for a specific page. And you want it, like for instance, you want to have like a courses page. And you know, whatever you specify in the meta stack, maybe the description that search engines use to create that highlight. Like when you go to Google and you search a particular topic, you see a highlight that says something about it, where you find it, and then the link for you to go to the page and find the whole text. That highlight is used with that description, meta description. And so if you want to put a description on each page, it's going to be different for each page. And this base file just wants to hold the common tags or the common content that all files will hold. So what we want to do in this kind of situation is to put a head block. How do we put the head block? So we'll do something like this. We use blocks. Blocks are written with a curly brace, and we put %sign here. There are different ways to do this. This is the most basic. By the time you get used to it, you're going to do your own any way you want it. Okay, and then we'll name this block. We'll call it block. People just say block and end block, but me, I like putting the block name. So I put this as block head, and then I will end block head here. End block head. And what I want to do here is to, when a page inherits this base file, they have this placeholder allows them to be able to define an extra metadata in the head part of the document. This is supposed to be in the head part, sorry, of the document. And then the basic metadata that we want to put, I'll put the title. They should define the title of each page, because for each page, the browser window can have about contact. You don't want every browser window to have the same thing. So you put a placeholder for what they will do there. Okay, you also want to have the common ones now. Let's say the meta chassis. Yeah, you can put the style sheet, but let's leave the style sheet for another lesson. But let's say meta name is equal to viewports. This is, you want this for the responsive web design to go on every page. We also want to the character set. Let's say meta chassis UTF-8, and then we also want or every other thing should be defined there. So if you have a custom style sheet that you want to include for each page, you can have a block for style sheet also. So your whatever you want to do determines how many placeholder you will use. So let's say block style sheet, for instance. So it's not the common name, the name is just block. I like to name my blocks like this. Okay, end block style sheet. So we left placeholders where any page that inherit this can define other metadata for the head area, and for the body area we can put common code, and if not, we just put block content like this. Okay, let's say we put a div tag like this. Let's say we want it like that. We want them to be able to include any JavaScript for that page, and also the context for that page. We've done this like this. We'll leave it like this, and then we can now inherit this. This is the base file on the other pages. So for as many pages we have the basic HTML template here that will inherit on all other pages. So now, do you understand it, Emmanuel?
Please, about the style sheet block, is it for an external style sheet?
So it can be external, it can be just a style script. So when we come to the index page now, let me illustrate it for you to see. The first thing you want to do is to extend the base file, right? So you write extend base.html like this, right? And then you, in the block head, let's say we want to put the description. So we say, let's put the title, and then we put the description. So we left block for block title, right? Block title. So you name the same block, and you put something between the start and end, which is home, and then we end block title. And the reason we have this is because in the base file we had block title here within the title tag, so we can put a title for the web page. Okay, when we have this block head, is that you can add more metadata if we want. So let's add the metadata here. So we'll put block head. So even here, this block head should end. You can end here, you can end at the end of the, before the end of the head tag, anyhow we want it. Okay, so I can put block head. And block head. Okay, and between this one I can define my, let's say I want to put a meta, let's say a description. So I'll put, let's inherit super, which we want to get everything from the parents base there. And then if we want to put the meta tag for description, we'll now put meta name is equal to description. Okay, and then we'll put content is equal to homepage. All right, and we'll close this like the self-enclosed. So we are done with the block head. Now, if we want to add the style sheet, now normally I'll put the block style sheet within the block head, but anyway, there you'll find different variation of this. People just do whatever they want here, as long as the placeholder is there for you to use it here. So for the style sheet now, I can now start block style sheet. If there's any style sheet on the parent block, you inherit that, and then you can add your own style sheet here. You end block style sheet, and then you now start the content block, and then let's end block content, and then the JavaScript, and then you inherit whatever you have on that one. And within the start and end content block is where you put everything that you want displayed on the web page. Now, do you understand it? So the style sheet can be a link. You can, between the start and end style sheet, you can decide to put a style tag if you want. Okay, and close style. You can do that, and then you write your style code here. So whatever you do, it should just be within the start and end of the placeholder. Okay, so you see I'm doing this on the fly. I did not structure this properly. So when you go back, you will see that you can structure this for start block head and end block head, and the title and everything will be within the block head if you want. The style sheet will be within the block head if you want, without having a block for style sheet if you want. And then the block content, it's going to have all of the content that is in that you want on the page, displayed on the page, and will be in the start and end. Like I want to say H1, welcome to Jinja2, and close H1, right? End block content. And if I have a JavaScript, block JavaScript, I've not ended block JavaScript. Let me end it here. I'll have that there. And then when I come to my web page and I refresh, I will see that my index page now is not going to display this yet because I have not linked to my index page. When I come to my app now, I'm not going to return this. I want to render template. So before that, from Flask, we import this, we import render template here. And so now we're going to use render template, and we're going to be rendering index.html. So once we do that, and I come here and I run the index page now, let's go to the index page, which is just /. We'll have an error, unexpected close curly brace. And when we look at this, we'll see that this is on line 3 on the index page. So when you see an error like this, you want to read it, because most of you will see this and you call me. So you always look at it and see unexpected close curly brace or blockhead without the %sign. It's showing us where the error is, and it's on line 3 of the index page. And so we'll go to the index page and we'll look at line 3 and we'll see that we didn't put the % here. You see that? We save this and we refresh our page, and then we still have error, and you tell us what the error is again. And to say here undefined error, undefined base is undefined. And let's go back there to see what we did. Line 1, top level template code extends base.html, and it says that base is undefined error. So base is defined, but what we did not do here is that we didn't put it in quotes to know that it is not a constant, but it is a template that we are rendering. So when you extend, you have to put it in quotes. So you see some of these errors, it's necessary you see them and you go through them, because most of you will go through these errors and you will not be able to trace them. And so when we refresh now, we'll see that we get welcome to Jinja2, which is what we want this template to hold in the body here. Welcome to Jinja2, and we render that template there. So do you understand it now?
Yes, that's helped me a lot. I used to have the link for the individual HTML files in the base HTML file, and I think this one you have illustrated that the customized link should be in the like the example, the index HTML file, and not in the base HTML file. Okay.
Yes, that's how it will be like this. And so when you get to the point where you build navigations, then you use the route or you use URL for, and we'll look at that when we get to week 28. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Edmond to look at responsive web design. Edmond, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
So unfortunately, I have to leave for another meeting, so I'll make you a host, and then you will do that and end the class. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. So let me stop share.
All right. Welcome everyone. My name is Edmond Kaboi, and I will be illustrating how we can create a responsive web page. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a minute. All right. So I have created a template to illustrate most of these concepts we have in HTML. So it's easy for everyone to also catch up and learn new things as well. Now, I'm going to try to take everything back from the beginning so we can easily move up to speed. Now, the reason I created all these templates were because of time. It would normally take us more time to type all these codes. So I think that this would help us move faster, and as well see every commonly used concepts or tags, elements, everything that is used in the HTML pages. Now, please feel free to ask questions as we go through them all over again. So I'm going to start from my structure here. Now we have seen how to create the templates files in from the backend. So before we head to the backend, we're just going to look at this from a very basic point of view on the front end. So this is more front end based, and you have seen the difference already, that we don't have some commonly used structure we have in the backend. So when you focused on front end, you want to first of all understand the concept, the basic of front end before you move to back end. That's when you need to connect and design something from the back end to the front end. So automatically, wherever your domain may be, maybe front end or back end, but it's important that we know most of these common concepts that we have on both. So now I have here a folder. I'm going to explain everything here as well. So I have here a folder, which is my structure, my project directory. It's called week 10. Now, in this folder, I have created several other folders. And so I'm going to close this. So we have, now I'm using Atom ID, unlike the Visual Studio Code we've used to seeing how to create templates and files in Visual Studio Code. So this is Atom. It's the same thing, but I think less functionalities or features like we have in Visual Studio Code. So they both have advantages, much advantages. But I just want to use this because it's very flexible and simple for front end for me. But they're quite the same thing. So here I have my file, which is my project folder, and this is where I'm going to, or this is where we have all related files that we want to use to create this page. Though it's been created, but assuming we haven't done this, this is how we structure the front end project directory. Now you may see other type of structures, but this is most common because it's a convention used by most front-end developers. Now it's also easy for the browser to locate files when you structure your files like this. So do not get confused with the backend. We may not have this these files as we have in the backend, the way it's structured in the templates and static. But when you understand how it's done in the front end, then you will get more understanding how we came up with the backend design. Now, this is the root, this is the project folder, and I have all these files in the root directory. So this file, which I named semantics.html, is where I have written all the codes or the HTML elements that we use to display content on the page. So this here can be seen as my home page. I could always rename it however I want, as long as it's what I'm designing. So let's name this home page. So by convention, you're going to see this often as the index page. So it can be the index page, or it can be the home.html, can be the home page, as long as you, the programmer, understands what you're trying to do. And it also makes it easier for other programmers to be able to read your files. So when I come to this root directory and I see this named like this, it gives me the understanding that this will be, or this is the home page where I would be able to navigate to other pages. Now, from the back end, this is what we knew as the index page, where we created a base file and referenced the structure from the base file to the index. So you don't have to try to think too much about it. What you just need to focus here is how to create these files on their own before we try to restructure them in the backend. So first, I have this file, which is my home page, and it's in the root directory. And I also have other folders. I have the CSS folder, which is always named CSS by convention. And in the CSS folder, we have a file called styles.css. So you can rename this, but most times you're going to see styles.css, style.css may not have the S, or main.css. So depending on how many CSS you have, you may want to name one main.css, and you want to name some specific page CSS. That's if I maybe want to create an about page, and I want that page to have a CSS of its own. So the CSS is the style sheet, is where we put all the styles that displays or makes the HTML contents look more appealing. So the style or the name we give the file for the CSS file, it's dependent on what we want. So I could rename this to be about.css if maybe this CSS file has styles for my about page specifically. So I'm going to also show you different ways to create styles that it doesn't conflict with other pages. So we're looking at this is a simple web page, but has most of the features most modern web page does. So it would be too complex if we have every features that we see on the modern websites. So I just created something simple that has most of the important elements that we would use or that we use often when we create our backend files. All right, now I have the style in the CSS folder, and it's also known as the external style sheet that Ms. Madrid mentioned. And this is usually in the CSS folder. And I also have a folder for my images. Now, all this has their own structure in the backend, but here I have them just in the root directory. So here, this is just focused on front end. So we understand that it's not it's not different. It's just because it's focused on the front end. That's why the structure is like this. But creating this here, we can always restructure it when we want to create the backend. Now, this is the CSS folder, and this is for my images. I have a few images here that I used on the page, and I also have my pages folder. The pages folder holds every other pages that is related to this website, that assuming this is the website project or a text, whatever we're building. So assuming this is the website project and we want to have several pages. So this is just a very simple structure. There are more complex way of doing this especially when we are integrating it with the backend. But yeah, this is just a simple way of displaying it. So in the pages folder, I have an about page, which is named about.html. So you see, we always name them with the HTML extension to specify that this should be read as a HTML document. And every element that is meant to display would display as an HTML document. Now we also have contact services. So if we want to have more pages, we can always restructure or arrange them here. If we want to have extra folders to specify maybe role based type of pages, like want to have different users accessing different type of pages, we're going to create different folders for the users and specify like this the pages that they would have access to. So this has all my pages, and this is my home page, and this is the root directory. So it's very important you understand your structure before you go ahead with your project, because you're going to be doing much referencing and you don't want to reference from the wrong directory. You're going to get lots of headache trying to figure that out. So when you understand your structure, you can easily reference different files that are necessary on your page. So I'm going to quickly go through this part again. Ms. Madrid has given us a little insight on it, and also there's a lesson video for all these front-end topics. So we can always go back to refresh our memories, but I'm just going to do a little review so we catch up on what we need to do. All right, so here I have my basic, you can look at it this way. You see the way the codes are arranged. You can see the main elements, which we had seen already. The HTML element, starting from the doc type declaration. So remember what Ms. Mildred said about the doc type declaration and also the HTML. So the doc type declaration, it just tells the browser what version of the HTML we are using. So in this case, we're using HTML5, which is the most up-to-date version. And the HTML here with the lang attributes. So we have what we call elements and attributes in HTML. We've had a lesson on this before, but I'm just going to mention it again so we remember these things. We have this HTML elements and the lang attribute for language, which specifies the language. So this is the root elements of an HTML document. All HTML documents must have this. Everything on the web page is written between the everything on the web page is written between the opening tag of the HTML, which we have here, and the closing tag, which we have at the bottom. So the attributes we have here for language is an attribute that specifies that the content in this page is going to be in English. So this is the keyword for English. So it's something that is important when we are creating pages, HTML pages. We want to specify the language. So when a screen reader device, when a screen reader software or application is reading the content on a web page for a user, it would read, it would first of all understand that this web page is in English, and it's going to read with the right pronunciations and all the English for us and all that. Then it also helps when you search for websites that are in English. So you know this also makes sure that your website is seen in English too as well. All right, now we have the head, and this head section contains metadata about the page, such as the character encoding. So we have a few of them here. We also have title, and we also have links as well. I'm going to explain them one by one. So what we have here, which is the meta chasset, this ensures that the web page can handle all types of characters like symbols and letters from different languages. Then we have the meta name. This meta name viewport and the attributes content. So you see the way it's written with the values, with device. All this helps the web page scale properly on mobile devices. It means that the web page will look good on phones and tablets. So it's just to have a responsive on other devices other than just the desktop device or the large screen devices. And then we have the title. Here the title has the name learning web page layouts, and you can see from here that tells us what page, what the page is, the name of this page. So you could always rename the page. The title text inside the tag will appear here whenever you change. So we could change this to whatever name, but it's going to appear, and it's just going to help the user know the page he's on, just the title of the page. So if you have other pages, you can as well give a name to those pages of your choice. And then we also have the link. and this link is for our style sheets. So this is going to connect the this HTML file to the external style that we have, which is called the styles.css we have here. This style.css. So this link is going to connect. So I'm also going to explain the process behind the connection. So remember, the CSS is what we use to style the web page, the colors, the layouts, everything we see that makes the web page look appealing. Else, what we're going to just have just text and elements containers. So here, the link here, what it does is because these attributes helps these elements to be able to modify these elements to have more use on the web page. Like, for example, this means that this is a style sheet, and the href helps us to connect the documents to the style sheet. And how do we connect this? We specify the folder. So for example, now we are in the home page. So when you want to reference a file, or any file in particular, may not be the CSS. We're going to see how to reference other files too as well. So here you can see that we are in the home page. We are in the root directory, sorry, and the name is home page here. So we want to reference this file called style.css. Now, all we had to do was, first of all, mention the name of the folder with a /. So this syntax means that this is a folder, and we want to reference this style sheet. So we also have to mention the name and make sure that it's mentioned with the extension, so the browser can tell that this is the file, the CSS file. So without the extension, it's just a plain document with no meaning. So we mention it with the CSS extension. So this will be able to tell the browser where the styles that will display on the web page. So, and all these are in the head area of the HTML documents. Now, we also have the body elements. We've seen that we have the HTML, we have the head, and now we have the body. So the body section here contains everything you see on the web page, such as text, images, links. You can see them already. These are image. This is an image. This is an image. All these are text, and these are links. So it's on the body elements that we create most everything we see on the web page. So the head just gives more meaning to the page, and the body displays everything that we create on the web page. So I'm going to explain all these elements as well. Now, in the body, we have a close tag which ends before the HTML elements, and the structure is always like this. So inside the body elements is where we have all the contents that will be displayed. And now there are several elements we have in HTML. This is a very short lesson, so we'll not be able to look at all the elements we have in HTML, but for the purpose of our backend project, we need to understand some important elements that we definitely would use. And even if you don't want to use them, there are also other elements that can be used alternatively. But this is just a simple structure, a simple style, or simple page layout that we can always use whenever we need to. So we can reference to this video since it's recorded if we have any challenges trying to create a web page. Now, there are different ways to do this, but the most important thing is knowing what the elements are for, which elements is necessary to use for particular section of our page. So now in the body elements, we have what we call this header elements. They are known as semantic elements. They help to organize our pages. So this header now could be seen as the top section. I want to maybe say it as the head, but so we don't get confused with the head elements. The head elements is in the HTML for these purposes, but this header, we look at it as the head section of a web page. So you see this part, because we have styled it, it gives us this nice look. But this parts where you see this color, we added the color from the style sheet. So after looking at these elements, we're going to see how we apply these styles to all these elements. So if you look at these parts, the parts with this color, this is the header. So it just contains things like the logo. Normally that's what most headers contains. The title just contains things like logos and navigation links. So by using the header, we tell the browsers and search engines that this is the introductory section of the web page. So it's what we see first. Those parts where you find those logos and text and navigations are known as the header. So you see how these elements, we could always use other elements such as this div container. I'm going to explain that, but it's best we use the right elements so we have it well organized and reads the system is going to read your file properly. And though it's still going to read when we use a div, but just as well for other readers like the programmers who wants to maybe collaborate with your project, and this just makes it easy for everybody to understand and also organize as well. So we have another element called the nav, and the nav tag is sometimes you could hear people refer to them as tags or elements. So the tags, when you see it in the open and close greater than sign, less than sign like this, it's known as a tag. But when you want to specify what type of tag is this, we call it elements and with the name. So this is a nav element or a nav tag. So it's another semantic tag that stands for navigation. It's used to group together links that help users to navigate through different parts of the website. Like you see here, we have home, about, services. This particular element is inside this header element. So you can look at it that this header is a container that contains navigations. So we can always use this particular nav element on the page or any other parts of the page, but just because we want to have navigations, that's why we used it inside the header. So it's proper we organize our page like this. So in the nav, I'm going to talk about these attributes, the classes, but let's focus on the elements before we look at the classes. So we always create the classes in the open tags of the class attributes. So we use attributes mostly, or we create attributes, or we add attributes to the open tag of elements. Now, not all elements in HTML has a closed tag like we've seen here, where the tag is closed and we have content or elements inside the element itself. So not all elements has a closed tag. As you can see, the meta tags does not have a closed tag. They are called void tags, and the ones with closed tags are just the normal tags, elements with closed tags. So here, when we look at this header, you can see it as a container that contains things like this, the logo, the navigation links. So we use the navigation to add content for navigations, and we have elements for everything. So here I have a div container, and this is most referred to as containers. You might hear some other programmers saying containers. They may not specify the name, but most times this div is referred to as containers, or you just hear it as a div, or you hear it as a div container. So you can look at this as now a real container where you just want to keep things or put things, so you can arrange them the way you like. it's very useful in HTML because there are several elements that need to be organized or positioned properly on the page. Like you see here, what this container holds is holding the logo, that's the image, and this heading. So you can see that they are well positioned at a particular parts of this page, and the other elements is positioned at is also a specific part of the page. So you see how organized it is, although it's done from the CSS, but when you put them in containers like this, you can be able to add styles using the class attributes or ID attributes. So we're going to look at the different attributes that we use to add styles on our CSS. Please, if I'm moving too fast, if this is your first time learning HTML, feel free to ask any questions so you can have more understanding. Now, the div container here, or the div element, is like I said, is a container or generic container used to group content together. Now, the class logo we have inside here tells the class logo tells the CSS, which when we look at CSS, it's going to tell the CSS that this div should be styled as part of the logo. And we also have image elements. Now, this element is is what we use to add images to the web page. We use this img element. So because of time, I choose not to type this, but you can always just look at them or reference them. There are different reference sheets to all these elements. If you don't remember how they are written, there are reference sheets online, there are libraries online that helps us to remember these elements. So what we're doing here is just to see what they are used for and why they should be used instead of other alternative elements. So the image is what we use to add images, and you can add attributes like classes to style them properly. And you can also specify, or we specify the image inside the image. This image tag we've opened, it's a void tag, so it doesn't have a close tag. And inside we specify the source of the image. Now, this source attribute tells the browser where the image is located. So we don't have the image file in this document. We have it in our images folder. So what we do here is like we did for the CSS stuff. We just reference we first of all mention, since we are in the root directory, there are different ways to do this, but that's depending on where the file you are referencing from. So we are referencing from the home page, and we want to add this image, the logo.png. So what we just did is we mentioned the images. Now, if we were to be in a folder, that's this home page, were to be in another folder, we would have to come out from that folder before we get to this images folder. So how do we come out from folder? We just use a double dot and a /. So instead of mentioning the name of the folder we're coming out from, we just use a double dot. And this means that we are out of any folder. And if we find ourselves, let's say just one folder, we are inside just one folder, and we come out from that folder, so we are now in the root directory. But in this case, we are not in any folder. That's this folder we are referencing from. So it's always important to know where you're referencing from. Now we're referencing from this home page, and it's in the root directory, and we want to go to this images folder to display this logo.png. So all we have to do is mention the name of the folder, and with a /. This means that we are entering this folder. Unlike when we're coming out, we use the double dots and a /, and when we're entering, we mention the name of the folder and a /. And then we want to mention the name. So we specify the name of the file or the image that we want to reference. So this name now is logo.png. So you see the extension is always mentioned. It's important. So it tells what type of file it is and display it according to the way it's supposed to. So as an image, PNG, it's going to display as an image PNG. And then the auth attribute here is just an alternate text that's in case the image does not load, this alternate text would be able to tell what was meant to be there. So here we could just also improve this description to tell that this is maybe the company logo or just the logo here. So if this image does not display, maybe the network is bad, or the browser has issues displaying PNG files, which is most unlikely, but most cases, say the network does not load the image properly, we're going to get the alternate text. So it tells you that there is something there, and it describes it that this was supposed to be a logo. So that's for the image tag. And we also have the H1, which we've seen mostly for headings. This is a text element. It was used for headings. So we can have class attributes inside the open tag, just to make sure that the heading itself is well styled, because the CSS is what we use to add the styles. So we have to create something to call it, to style it on the CSS. And this is the heading, which we have here, School of Programming and Software Development. And all we just had to do, so I'm going to close here so see more of this page, is write the heading in the H1, and in the open tag of the H1, we use the attributes, the class attributes, to add the name of the class that we're going to write our styles or give our CSS property. So we're going to look at the CSS and each and every of these classes we create here and see why and how they are used. So here we have closed the container. So you can see that this is why it's called a container, because now it holds some elements or content. These elements has their own content. So it holds elements with content. And with this class we have on it, it would enable us to style these contents to display properly, or add colors or anything we like. So we have these classes again everywhere. So each class has a specific CSS property, and we'll also look at them. Now we've closed this container, and that means the whole of this area is this div called logo. That's the whole of this container. Now inside this header, we're still in the header, we have the navigations, and the navigations here is added using a list element. So this UL element is known as list elements. We have other type of list elements. We have unordered and unordered. So the difference here is the ordered, this UL means unordered. So it doesn't give any particular numbering or order. It just uses markers like the list you have on your MS Word. So when you use list without numbering, it's known as unordered list. And when you use the ones that the OL, that's the ordered list, you're going to have numberings, and you can specify the numbers. You want to have alphabets, that's the counter. You want to have alphabets, you want to have Roman figures, you can specify them when you're using the ordered list. But here we use the unordered list because we don't want to have numbering on the navigations. We just want them to display. So we're going to look at the CSS properties we use for them as well. Now we close the navigation inside the header because these are all the navigation elements, that things we use to create the navigations. So we put them inside the navigation elements. Now, this is just one way of creating a web page, but understanding why they are used here, how they are used, can help us create our own page dynamically how we want to. So we've closed this nav, and we've also closed the header. Now we are done with this head parts of the web page. Now we're going to the sections. Now this section is another semantic element. it helps us to put our pages in contents in sections. The tag here is used to group contents that belongs together. So these sections contain both the sidebar and the main elements. So the sidebar here, which I labeled here sidebar, we use the aside element. It's also a semantic element that we use to organize content, because we want to have all these contents at the side of the page. We use this element. Now, this doesn't really means that when we use this element, the content will be on this side. By default, every content starts from the left on HTML by default. So just like the way it's written here on the HTML document, but we can always use CSS to position it on which side we want. So if we want it on the left side, we want it on the right side. And for the contents displayed side by side like they are here, we use CSS for that as well. So normally, if we don't have a CSS, or we didn't add all these classes to create styles for them, all these contents will display just the way we have created them here, one after the other, starting from the left. So it's the CSS that makes it more appealing and well designed. So the aside is for content we want to put on, like a side information or side navigation or anything we want to put at the side of the page. That's why we have this content here, and say this is the sidebar content. And then inside this same section, so you can see they are related. They're just something we want them to display side by side. That's why we put them in the section elements. So it groups them together. Now we have the aside, and then we also have the main. So this main element is for main contents. Like you see here, we can increase the area this main content can take. But what we need to know here is that for us to organize our page, to know what content is the main and what content is the side, we use the proper elements that as labeled here, aside and main. So this is for the main and this is for the aside. Now this is just one section, and you see where it takes a role of its own, because we have a style for rows. That's why you see it's taking just one row. And we have another section, just as the name implies. We have another section element for another related content. So the space they take is determined by the amount of content you have inside them. So this is a section now of its own. And in this section, we have another container for our image. So you notice I use containers to add my images. It helps me to be able to style the images or position the images properly. So this class is a positioning grid class. So we're going to look at it. It makes sure that this image stays on the left part, or on this first part, since everything starts from the left. And if I take this this container to, I'm going to show you this. So if I take this container and put it after the form, if I put it here and I save and I refresh my page, okay, sorry, there's something wrong with the page. I'm going to open the page again. Oh, okay. So because I renamed the page, it couldn't recognize the page. So I'm going to open it again. Okay, so now we have the page, and you see that because I changed it, but I've already added styles, so it's affecting it here. But you see that because the image container is no longer at the top, it displays below the form. So it's according to the way you arrange your HTML elements. It's how they display. How you organize them in your HTML determines most of the position, and then you can now adjust which area of that particular row, how you want it to display on the page. So I'm going to undo this and go back to how it was. And if I refresh, we have the image displaying before the form. Now, here we have next another container. So I always make sure that my contents are in containers or the div tags, so I can style them properly and position them well as well. So here we have another container for this form, and we're going to be working with forms for our project, our class project. So here I use the form so we can see how the form is created. So when you see the forms we'll be using, you don't get confused, and you can as well create any form from any design. That's the physical forms or paper forms, and you can create them in HTML as well. So this is a basic sign up form. You can create any form, any type of form. It can be registration form. It can be like the clinic forms we have in the class project. So all you have to do is make sure that you have the form elements, and you have the labels and inputs, just like we have seen in the lesson that we have for the backend course. So because of time, I'm just going to leave this part for us to go back to the class lesson, so we see how this is done again. And then we have the footer, where we have the footer's content designed. So this is all we have for the HTML. Now for the CSS, where we have styled this page, we have something we call the grid view layout, and this enables us to be able to place our content or elements in grid views. So we have what we call so you can look at this as before I explain this, you have to look at the page in full. So let's look at the page in full. This page now, let's look at it as rows and columns. So for each section, we have something that we have a row. We have it as a row, like we have here in this row, and then we also have this row, and then we see things are arranged in columns. This has this is taking half of the page, and this is also taking half of the page. So there are rows and columns. So we call this layout grid view layouts in CSS, and it's one of the most responsive layouts we use in HTML. So if I take back the page to a smaller size, you see it adjusts and still maintains the style. So the grid view layout helps us to be able to position and help us to organize the HTML elements and contents in a well grid or the well placed responsive layout. So here we have styles that are what we use. There we have styles that we use to make sure that this page displays all we are seeing here. So first we have the asterisk elements here, and this is just to say that we want all the elements in the HTML document. So you know how we also use the asterisk when you want to select all from a particular in the database. So you see, this is just saying that all documents, all elements in the document would have a particular style we specify in this block of code. So here we just want to set the box sizing to border box, and this property, because this is not a CSS class or a front-end course, we are just going to look at them quickly without much explanations. So this just makes sure that the elements we have is well calculated, so it can tell how to position them, the element sizes we have in the document, so it can tell and display them properly without overlapping one another, or just to make sure that it's displays the contents properly. We also have this class for our row. So you notice these classes were used in the sections, and this start property here just makes sure that the rows are displayed in a table format, and this properties enables that. We also have the class for columns, which are these columns we have here, col6. So this style makes sure that all the columns start from the left. That's why you see when we have the columns, we always have these two. By default, all elements start from the left, but this makes sure that it doesn't conflict elements or style, that it starts from the left and has a padding of 10px, and padding is just the spaces around the content. Now this media query helps for responsiveness, so this makes sure that for this screen size, we specified here the mean width of 600px, that every column we take their positions. Like for example, this calculations here is not where this particular lesson is too short for us to explain all the calculations behind this, so you can always register for front-end courses to have more knowledge about this. But this is very important for layouts when you design your front-end pages. So each code here has a percentage they take on the web page. You can see 8%, 16%, 25%. So for each code, there is a specified space or width they take on the page. So that's why when we use the code 6 here, it means the code 6 on these two elements, it means take equal spaces on the web page, because the total columns we have on the web page is 12. That's why we have up to 12, and for 12 it's 100%. So for each row, you want to specify the amount of space that the items or the contents are going to take. So we use 6, so they take 50% per content, and we have just 2, so we just use 2 of them. And then we also have the styles for the logo. We set the width, set the display, and aligned it to be in the center of the containers. So every content inside this logo class that we created, we make sure that they display 100% in the container. And the display flex just makes sure that we're able to position them, or the default display, which is usually block, is not used. So the flex just makes sure that they are flexible and we can position them however we want. So we'll align the items to the center so they are horizontally well placed in the container. Then the logo image, which we created the class inside the image element, is to make sure that the image is 50% wide. So in case the image is too big, we use these properties to style the images on the page. And the margin right just says give it 10px space from the left, from the right side, which we have between the image and the heading. And then we also have more styles for the header. So remember, we created all these classes, so these properties are used, so we can research more on properties that we use to style elements on the page and how they're styled. So we can't go through all of them because of time, but you can see that each class and each element that we have on the page is styled here. We also have styles for the form, so we have for footer, section, and all the properties have specific display for them. So this is how we style the forms. To make sure that the forms are displayed below each other, we change the display of the labels to block and make sure there's a space after each of them. That's why we use the margin bottom. So there are different properties for this. But margin bottom makes sure that the bottom of it for the label has a space of 10px. And then the input, you can call this a type. You can call the type of input. So if you remember from the lesson, we have 4 forms. If you go through it, you're going to see that we have different type of inputs, and this is how you style the types. The type for email, you call them like this, and you add your styles to them like this. So we set the width, set the height for those specific inputs, just to make sure that they display well as they are here. And that's just basically all we have for this page. So you can always reference the class lesson videos for HTML and or this video, or reach out to us on one-on-one if you have any questions or challenges. So I'm going to stop the class here, and I wish you all success in your lessons. All right, bye everyone.